All right. Well, we're glad you're here. Let's go ahead and get started today. What we're looking at here is tips and tricks for AcuGraph professionals, because we don't want to deal on the negative and all the mistakes. And we do see folks like make a lot of mistakes, but really we want you to get the most out of your AcuGraph. And so we're going to do our best to give you all the insider tips to show you things maybe you didn't know you could do, or show you how to do things that maybe you don't do very often. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in. Now, the very first thing that I want to make sure that everybody's familiar with is your AcuGraph account portal. This is a big deal. This is something we've worked really hard on, and that's why I said this is your key to AcuGraph happiness, if you understand how to use that portal. And so I'm going to demonstrate how to do that, and I'm going to just do it live here. I'm going to log in on my browser and go to acugraph.com. And then I'm going to go up here to account login. And then I'm going to put in my login information and let it log in. Now, as you can see, once we're here, I'm in my account. I have the enterprise level because, you know, I'm special that way. And here you can manage your account. This is where you manage your actual annual renewal and so on. But notice these items here, 1 through 5. We've got getting started and practice management and so on. Each one of these is a whole training module that's been put together and designed and dedicated to helping you get the most out of your AcuGraph. The number one thing that people were asking us for when they bought AcuGraph was, how can I get some more training? How can I get some live training? How can you walk me through what I need? So we put a lot of time and effort into making this really top notch for you. So I'm going to click on getting started here, the 101 class. As you can see, all right, we're going to have a video here about installation and setup, a tutorial about how to do graphing, an invitation to join the Facebook group, putting your listing in and so on. And then look at step 5 here. We have software training videos. So if I click here, to learn how to use the software, then look at these videos. We start with patient management, case management, exams, and so on. As I scroll through this, every one of these is a whole video tutorial. And so, for example, if I want to know, if I have some questions, say, about printing and emailing my graphs to my patients, I click View Now, and I've got a video tutorial that's going to walk me right through it step by step. So just about any question you have about all the features in the software is going to be answered right here in a video tutorial. And most of the tutorials are pretty short and to the point, you know, 3, 4, 5 minutes to show you how to get things done. If we go back to where we were, along with the software training videos, there are some introductory webinars that are included as well. And so getting to know AcuGraph 5, some of these webinars are actually the webinars that we participate in, like this one, where we do it live. And so I just want to make sure everybody's aware that you have these resources available. What we just looked through, that was only the getting started module. We have a whole module for practice management, for example, where we have a number of these live webinars that we've done. There's also some blog posts that it'll point you to. All of the best resources we prepared. Reading graphs, talking to patients, marketing your practice. This is the other one I wanted to highlight. If you click here, first you can download the Media Marketing Kit. All right, this is where you get the AcuGraph logo, screenshots from the software, and patient-focused videos that you can put right on your website. So these are marketing tools we've prepared for you to tell the world that you're different, that you're special, that you do AcuGraph, that you have something to offer that nobody else has, or that very few other people have in your market. And we want you to do that. So you can download the Media Kit there. It's all free. Then we have some marketing training, blog posts, and marketing webinars, including our webinar on Health Fair Success Formula, which was a very popular, very successful webinar that we did. So I guess to summarize then, when you log into your AcuGraph account, you've got all these resources ready for you, and there's a lot here. So I encourage you to spend some time getting to know this so you can maximize the return on your investment. For those of you that may not remember how we got here or saying, wait a minute, where's that again? I want to show you one more time. If you just go to AcuGraph.com, here's the main AcuGraph webpage. Up at the top, there's account login. When you log in, then there you are. It's going to take you in to the portal. All right, so.
Can I add a little?
Yeah, Kimberly, go ahead.
So what we recognized through this process, when we had new AcuGraph owners, we had a lot of information for you. We've spent a very long time creating videos, creating webinars, creating blog posts with a lot of information to teach. So what we did was we broke it down into segments, because we realized that when you are a new AcuGraph user, you're going to learn on different levels. So the first one of Getting Started 101 is really all the basics, all the things that you need to know in order to get going and open up your box, download, get things. There's a few case studies. There's some things to look at within there, and videos and webinars that are very specific to just the getting started portion. Then as you know your AcuGraph and now you've gotten started and you want to expand your knowledge and you want to get better at it with the practice management section, once you click on practice management, we have added videos and webinars and blog posts that are very specific to that. So just recognize that I lost the page that Adrian was on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put it back up.
Okay. I was following my outline there.
Here you go.
There you go. So on the next level, Level 3, reading graphs and talking to patients. When we get your phone calls and we get your questions and the areas that you're struggling with as you're progressing, we just wanted to have a lot of information at your fingertips. So if you want to get better at talking to patients, go to the section 3, and then marketing is section 4, and then you'll always go back to this, becoming an AcuGraph expert, because even if you're like Jackie Victor, who's been with us for 5 years, she's still expanding and we continue to add more information. So we want this to be your portal, your place where you go. It is information about your account. It's the place where you can sign up for webinars. This will continue to evolve and grow. So the becoming an AcuGraph expert, if you've already been with us and you've already been through the getting started portion, there will be more information that's added to the different segments along the way. So we want this to be your home base.
All right, very cool. Thank you, Kimberly. That's awesome. And the philosophy behind it, I'm glad you mentioned that this really is all driven by you. The questions that we get turn into training videos, turn into blog posts, and turn into webinars. And so it's all about you. All right, the next item that I wanted to mention after the AcuGraph account portal, for tips and tricks, the #1 technical tip that I can give you today is about Windows Update. Your key to getting AcuGraph to work at all is often Windows Update. Let me tell you what I mean by that. As the software has advanced and developed, and as we use more and more sophisticated programming tools to keep up with the demand for more and more sophisticated features in the software, what it ends up doing is that it relies on more and more resources in the operating system. Now, in Macintosh, that tends to be automatically handled, and it tends to not be a big deal. But in Windows, because of the way Windows is put together, there are a lot of discrete components. And if you're missing a component that AcuGraph needs to use from Windows, then AcuGraph won't run. One of the common problems we see is I can't talk to my probe. It says my probe's not connected, and my probe is connected. So what's going on? Or when people are trying to install and it won't install, the solution generally is that Windows is out of date. And so we explain that you need to run Windows Update. Now, here's one of the problems we run into. I know this is kind of small, but this is an actual screenshot from an actual AcuGraph user. You'll notice that it was taken at 1:57 a.m., but this is someone who couldn't get AcuGraph to work. And so we jumped in to try to help. And this is what we found. First of all, I want to point out that it says updates were installed? Never. This person had installed Windows 7 on their computer and had never, ever, not even once, updated it since Windows 7 came out in what, 2009? And so there were 169 important updates available. Windows used to call those critical updates. And there were 98 optional updates. So we're talking 250 missing pieces of the operating system, 250 missing updates. Any guesses how long it took to run Windows Update and get this fixed and going? The answer would be in the double digits of hours. The other problem is that if you fail to run Windows Update frequently, then you end up in a situation where Windows Update itself gets broken and can't run because it's too outdated. Now, we could comment all day long on whether that was a stupid programming move or a boneheaded programming move. I'm not sure which one Windows committed there, but if your computer can get out of date enough that it is utterly incapable of updating itself, then you've got a real problem. And we see that actually with alarming frequency. So the moral of the story is you need to set Windows updates to run, and to run frequently or to run automatically in the background. If you keep Windows updated and current, not only are you going to enhance your security, which is a very big deal, but also you're going to keep everything running. Now, there are those who wonder, yeah, I don't know how to run Windows Update. I have no idea what to do. And so let's talk about that for just a minute, how to run Windows Update. I'll only do this briefly, but I'm just going to pull up a different web page for you. 1 second. All right, thanks for bearing with me, and I will share my screen again. This is at acugraph.com/start. And when you do that, then it forwards you right here. And if you select Windows for your operating system, then right here are all the instructions for installing Windows updates. And you don't have to just do this if you are installing AcuGraph brand new. You can do this anytime, and you should make sure that you have Windows Update running. So depending on which system you have, if you click here, you will actually get a tutorial, a video walking you through what to do. Also, if you don't know what you have, then right down here, it's going to show you right on the screen. So you can see that I'm using a Mac today, OS X 10.11.6, but it'll tell you what version of Windows you have. So that was acugraph.com/start. All right, so enough about Windows Update. There is a question here from Kim, and it looks, let's see. Oh, first of all, Emma says, got the message about MacBook Pro. Looks like Cameron answered that. And then Kim said, I'm trying to install my new updates. I go through the whole install. It says it's finished. When I open it, it says there's a newer one available. Want to install. Okay. Yeah, and you can, Kim, give us a call at our tech support, and we can walk you through what to do there. It won't be a big deal. It won't be a big problem. Okay, next item. Look at these two graphs. Tell me what you see. Are they the same graph? I had a user that I was talking on the phone with just this last week who said, you know, you got to do something about the colors in those graphs because the blue for deficient and the purple for split are the same color. I just can't even tell the difference. And so it's darn near impossible to read these graphs. It's a real problem. And he wanted to know if we could do something about that. Well, and so here it is close up. These are the same graph, the same segment, and look at that. I see the point. Look at the blue and look at the purple. They are almost the same. But that's because what's going on is monitor color adjustment. If you don't calibrate your monitor or don't adjust your color very effectively, then you're going to get all kinds of weird things that happen with color. And this isn't a programming issue. This isn't something that we can change in AcuGraph. This is actually because of how monitors produce colors. If you have it calibrated so it's got more of a green hue to it or more of a red hue to it, then you will end up with whites that aren't really white, with grays that aren't really gray, and with colors that run the gamut. And so these two pictures here that you're looking at, it's just the difference between calibrating your monitor and not. Now, some operating systems have built-in calibration features for the monitor. Google for how to calibrate yours. And at the very least, if you can't calibrate, then at least turn up the brightness, because that'll bring out the differences between the colors. If everything is very dark, then the purple and the blue, for example, will tend to look the same. But if everything is brighter, then you'll see the difference. So if you're having trouble with your graphs, if stuff is looking ugly and hard to discern, spend 5 minutes and do a color calibration on your monitor. You'll be glad you did. It'll look night and day difference. And I personally have 2 monitors connected to my computer, and when they weren't calibrated the same, graphs looked really ugly on my left monitor and really nice on my right monitor. And so then I learned I had to calibrate them so that they would both look the same. Okay, I see more Q&As coming in, and I see Cameron is answering those questions. So I'm going to let Cameron keep fielding those for a minute. Oh, somebody, this is a good question though. I'm gonna mention this. Somebody asked if you need to run Windows Update on a Mac, and the answer is no, only on Windows. Also, the other thing, people do say, hey, you know, I have a brand new computer, so I don't need to run Windows Update because my computer is new. Well, now that Microsoft is releasing updates and patches darn near every week, I promise, the day you open your computer and plug it in from the box, brand new, it is out of date. And so you do need to run Windows Update right then and get everything up to date before you install AcuGraph. Okay, so we talked about fixing the colors. This is just a little pro tip to make everything look nicer for your patients. Next, we're going to talk about how to measure properly. This is one that we get a lot of questions about, and this is the most basic and most fundamental skill to using AcuGraph, and so we want to make sure that you've got the best training possible. And so for that, we actually, thank you to Kimberly, we've actually prepared a video about this, about point location and measurement. And I want you to watch that. Before we get into the video, no, it's not going to be that video. Before we get into that, before we get into our video though, I want to point out just a couple of quick things. These are the real basics, and these are things you probably already know, but I'm going to go ahead and point them out anyway. First of all, we want to make sure that people are using the probe properly, that you understand that you do have to have a Q-tip in it, and that you understand how to hook everything up right. You'd be surprised, you know, over the years we've had people call and ask questions, and you know, I've had on more than one occasion people that had no idea you were supposed to put anything in the tip of that probe. They were just putting the metal on the skin. They were wondering why it didn't read well. The other things that we teach, obviously, you want to regulate your pressure. You want to regulate your angle. You want to try to keep your pressure uniform. And if you're not sure about keeping your pressure uniform, something that I found that I actually used to do to train is I got a little scale for the male, and I would push on the scale and let it take a reading for how many grams of force I was putting. You can do in grams or ounces, whatever you like, and then do it looking away so I couldn't see, and try to do it several times and then check and see if I could do consistent pressure each time. The more you practice, the more you'll be consistent with your pressure. All right, before we move on to our next tips and tricks, and we still have a few more important ones to cover, I want to pick up some of these questions that we have. So Mary Jill says, I've been graphing for about 3 months now, and what I'm finding almost across the board is triple energizer graphings are all elevated or excessive. What does this mean? Well, it can mean probably 2 things for you, Mary Jill. Number one, it could be that when you're graphing and you're using the probe, that for some reason, when you get over there to the triple energizer point, for some reason you're using more pressure, and it might just be due to the geography, the anatomy, the landscape, the layout. You may just, for some reason, press more on that point. If it's consistently happening across the board with every patient, then you might want to look at technique. On the other hand, it could be coincidence. I can't tell you the number of times I've had somebody call me and say, I think there's something wrong with my equipment. It's not calibrated because the last 3 people I've had have all read low. And so I know the equipment's broken because it's reading low. And I explain, well, that's not possible. If it's reading, it has to be accurate because it internally calibrates 10 times a second. So it can't just start to read low like it's wearing out or battery's dying or something like that. And so I tell them, I think it's a coincidence. I think you had 3 patients in a row who had low readings. And sure enough, they call me back and say, hey, you know what? The next person read really high. Yeah, you're right. It was a coincidence. So that's the other thing I'd say, Mary Jill, it could be a coincidence. But check that and see if it really is every single patient. Then yeah, you might want to look to your technique, your point location, and your pressure. Mikhail said, is there a difference when you measure black skin and white skin? I will tell you that, yeah, statistically speaking, the more pigment you have in the skin, the lower it tends to read. Now, that's not going to make a massive difference, like, it's going to read half or something, but it will make some difference. The pigmented skin tends to be slightly less conductive. So, that's nothing to be alarmed about at all. It doesn't matter a bit because what we're looking for is the balance between the meridians and not the overall level of what the meridians read. So that's okay. Nothing to worry about there. Let's see. Mary Jill says the consistency of pressure with the probe should be what? Measured how? How many milligrams? There's not a specific number of milligrams or ounces of pressure. What I tell people and when I'm training them is, how much pressure are you comfortable with if you close your eye and take your finger and push on your closed eyelid against your eyeball? You can take a little bit of pressure, but you're not going to push hard in there. Don't do that with the probe, by the way. Use your finger. That's the sort of pressure that you should be using on the probe. So if you start with a probe like this and just let gravity do it, so that you're just resting it. Sorry, let me put it where you can see. You're just resting it on there. That's a good start. From there, it's really not much more pressure than what the weight of the probe is. And so everybody kind of has their own slightly different pressure that they're comfortable with. And I've been graphed by a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people do graphing. So I'm not going to say, oh, it must be 2 ounces or whatever that is. I'm going to say it must be consistent. You want to use the same amount of pressure on every point you measure, and that's what to go for. Okay, Mary Jill says, at the time of going to feet source points in the bar, or is the bar held always in the opposite hand of the foot being measured, or does it not matter? The answer is it does not matter at all. We've actually done testing with this, and we found out that you can have the bar here and be measuring on the same hand. Or you can have the bar here and be measuring on the opposite hand or opposite foot. The point of most resistance, the thing that determines the measurement, is going to be the actual point you're measuring, not the bar. The bar has a huge surface area. How much of my palm is touching the bar? I've got this much skin surface area making electrical contact here versus that much right there. So the point of most resistance is at the point being measured. So bottom line is, you can have the bar in whatever hand you want. You don't have to switch hands. None of that matters. When you're measuring Jingwell points, you'll want to switch hands just because you can't get to the Jingwell points. And you do need to make sure that your patient does keep their fingers around the bar. I've seen people that just kind of have it sitting there. Now you're cutting down the surface area. Now it may matter. So they don't have to squeeze. And that's the language I use. I say, hold this in your hand, keep your fingers around it. You don't have to squeeze, and that's fine. Okay, Kim says, I find Jingwell readings so much easier to do. I've done both readings on myself, and there seemed to be not much difference in results. What do you think? Jingwell readings are easier to do. They're easier to locate. They're easier to be consistent on. And the only thing you really have to watch for is if you have a hangnail or some break in the skin that's going to interfere with the reading. Jingwells are not as active, so you won't find either readings that are as high or that have as many findings. But Jingwells are a perfectly valid way to read, and they tend to be sometimes different than the source points because you're measuring different systems. The source points, or the yuan points, measure the main channel and the associated organ, whereas the Jingwells measure the effect of the musculotendinal branch on the main channel, because the Jingwells are where the musculotendinal branches connect to the main channel. So as long as you keep that in mind, so you know what you're looking at, then you can use whichever you're comfortable with. All right. Let's see. Mikhail says, in what case you use for measuring source points, Jing points, or Ryodoraku? Personally, I don't use Ryodoraku points because they are 8 out of the 12 are source points anyway. The other 4 are not. They are the traditional points that Nakatani identified back in the 1950s. Just about every modern adaptation just uses the source points. But we left the Ryodoraku in there for purists who feel like you have to use the method that was developed in the 1950s and you may never deviate. If so, there you go. But statistically speaking, less than 1% of our users actually use Ryodoraku points. Source points versus Jingwell, I just spoke about. Because of the musculotendinal branches, if you are dealing with musculoskeletal problems, you may want to look at Jingwell points. Also, if the source point graph is just a disastrous mess and you want to see what's going on in the musculotendinos, because they kind of serve as reservoirs for the main channels, then that's a good place to start. And also, if you measure the source points and everything looks great and there's nothing to treat, but the patient has symptoms and you know there's a problem, then go measure Jingwell and see what you find. And there's more that could be said. That's a whole seminar by itself, and we do some training on that. But there's a quick primer on it anyway. Kim said, you have said that chi level reads lower than actual chi reading would be measuring source points. Should I calculate a percentage to calculate a more accurate chi level? I'm not sure I'm following the question, Kim. Chi level reads lower than actual chi reading would be measuring source points. Should I calculate a percentage? I'm not following what you're getting at. However, in general, the chi level itself is not the most important part of the reading. It's the balance. It's how everything compares to everything else. So if everything averages 100 or if everything averages 50, I'm less concerned about that. And I'm more concerned about if one meridian is 100 and another meridian's 50. Well, now I know something. Okay. Great. Let's move on to a few more tips and tricks that I want to make sure we got covered today, because time is rapidly getting away from us. So I'm going to put up my screen again. There we go. Okay, we got past the video time. By the way, that's a screenshot from an old Saturday Night Live spoof on acupuncture. Yeah, it's got blood going everywhere. I know, hilarious. Okay, let's talk about archiving. This is one that comes up from time to time. People don't understand archiving patients, the role of archiving, what it does, what it means. And so I'm going to switch my screen over to where I can show you my AcuGraph. Hopefully you're all seeing my, my AcuGraph window now. And so if I show all my patients here, let's take the search off, you can see that I have many patients. I've got over 1,100 patients in here. What controls whether a patient is archived or not, actually, when I have that patient selected, then this little pencil right here, I just click on that and I can archive or I can unarchive that patient. If a patient is archived, it simply means that that patient doesn't show up in your active patient list and doesn't count in your count of active patients. They're kind of in long-term storage. You don't lose anything. All their data, all their records, everything is preserved, but it takes them out of an active status. Now, if you put somebody in an archive status and you can't find them anymore and you want to unarchive them, then you go up here to settings, the top of the screen, and right here on other settings, you click show archived patients. And then the archived patients will show up in your list. You can select the one you want. You can unarchive that patient and you can change the status like that. So pretty easy to handle. Now the question is, why would you ever want to archive patients? Well, really there's two reasons. First of all, you'll want to archive patients if you have too many patients and you have, too lengthy of a list. You don't want to scroll through them all. You only want to see the active patients you're currently treating. Then that makes it super easy. The other time that you would want to make sure you archive patients properly is if you have a plan. It depends on which plan you're using. We run into this from time to time because right now we have 3 service and support plans for AcuGraph. And as you can see, I've circled here in red. Each one allows a different number of active patients. And so if you have, we have people, for example, that subscribe to the professional plan, but then they try to install it and it gives them a message that says you have too many patients because they have 1,000 patients and they bought a 500 patient plan. Well, the solution is go through and archive everyone you're not actively treating, because I guarantee you're not actively treating 1,000 people right now. Kimberly, you just popped back up. Are you there?
Yeah, I got lost and I came back.
Oh, welcome back. All right. So moving on then.
Back on your last screen when you had all the patients up. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. Mary Jill asked how to alphabetize the patient's last names. Is it possible? Can you just show that real quick on that screen?
Yeah, sure. So what we'll do, let me go ahead and switch back over here. Do that and do this. Okay, so if I go here and I have all my patients up, then see these columns here? Any column I click on, it will sort. Right now, it's sorted by last name alphabetical. You can see all the A's here. And I had a lot of these very similar last names when I was in Nigeria and graphed a whole lot of people in Nigeria. And here's all the names. Well, if I want to sort by first name, I just click first name. And now you can see that it's alphabetical by first name. Or last edit. If I want to see who I saw most recently, then there it is. If I want to sort by who has the most graphs, then I can sort there as well. Oh, and I'm really making it think now. And if you click multiple times, it will change the order. So I'm going to go back here to last name. I'm going to sort by last name, and you see it's all A's. If I click last name again, now it's all Z's. It's in reverse alphabetical order. So that's how you sort. It's very fast and easy. So good question there. Thank you. Let's go back here and I'll get back into my next slide. All right, so we talked about how to archive and unarchive patients, makes your life easier, also makes your plan fit you better. Let's talk about using the red flag feature in AcuGraph. This is an important feature, and this is one of those did you knows, as in, did you know AcuGraph could do this? Let me show you how this works. So I'm going to switch back over here to AcuGraph. Sorry about all the switching I have to keep doing, but that's how it goes when you go back and forth feature to feature. I'm going to go to my example patient. Kimberly, are you seeing my AcuGraph now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm on my example patient. I look at my patient overview. Here's my overview, and you can see I've got my records and last graph and picture and all that stuff. But right up here, do you see this little flag icon? I bet a lot of people don't know what that does. I'm going to click that flag icon. This is designed for red flags. This is so that anytime I'm looking at this patient, if I'm in the patient overview looking at the dashboard, it'll tell me immediately, hey, stop, notice there's something you need to remember about this patient. So for example, if a patient has hemophilia, yes, thank you, I spelled it right. Okay, if the patient has hemophilia, I save that, and now there's a red flag. So when this patient comes up, I say, oh, red flag, warning, something I need to keep in mind. I can click right here and see what it is to warn me, and if a patient's hemophiliac, I'm obviously going to possibly needle differently, and I'm going to be very careful about bleeding. So that's what the red flag warning is. If you have something that's a temporary situation and it goes away and you clear that, then when you save that, the red flag is no longer red. Make sense? Fair enough? Easy to see?
Hey, that's a great place to put little tidbits of information like this patient always runs late, this patient has panic attacks on the table, all those little things that you just kind of want to know, but you don't want to show up on the chart.
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of hidden behind that red flag thing, so it won't show up unless you click, but it'll be there if you need it. Great point. All right, one other feature I wanted to point out that a lot of people don't realize is possible is the photos. And the reason some people don't realize is because this is a fairly new feature that we've just added. You used to be able to just drag and drop a picture in here, but now you can actually take a picture. And so here we go. I clicked on the little camera icon. That's a terrible picture. We'll put that right there. And there it is. I've got my I Love Acupuncture sticker on, by the way, and I'll talk about those in a minute. We brought those out on a whim because we thought they were fun, and we can't keep them on the shelves. Everybody's buying them up. Now, the other place you can use photos is in the patient file, all right? Right here under the picture tab. So if you're looking in your patient file where you're keeping your notes, and you have a condition or a problem that you want to take a picture of, maybe they have an injury, maybe they have a rash, maybe you want to have a picture of their tongue. This is where you do it. So you click right there. Don't diagnose me.
So we can't actually see the whole process of your screen that comes up where we're taking the picture. We're just seeing your final picture that you put in.
Oh, it's not showing you that window?
Yeah, just so that people know that. For this pictures section, just recently I'm working on a Bell's palsy patient, and I took a picture of her trying to smile on the first day, and then we've been taking regular pictures along the way to show her progress, and then I have pictures right in the chart. It's been helpful.
Excellent. And I'll add, by the way, that you don't have to snap a picture with the camera in your computer. If you have an external, like a webcam hooked up, then you can pick which camera it uses. So you can point the camera at their tongue or at their toe or whatever you're taking a picture of and snap that. So totally useful, and it stores it right there in your notes and keeps it forever. So great feature. If you're not using that feature, then start using it. All right, and sorry that it wasn't showing the pop-up window. I thought it was there. So we talked about using the photos, and we talked about two places to use the photos. There's one other area where I think that some people don't realize they have this feature built into their AcuGraph, and that is screening mode. Not this kind of screening, but when you're doing a screening exam. You're out in the public, you're doing something to help attract new patients, you go to a health fair or a live screening event. And so here's what that looks like. All right, so for screening mode, when you do a new exam,
left, lung 9.
You can see here, this is the normal source exam. We have Jingwell.
Beginning exam, left, lung 11.
These should be pretty familiar to us. But if we just go over here on the tabs to screening mode,
exam, left, lung 9.
Then this will allow you to measure only the patient's hands. You won't have to do the hands and feet, which is a real bonus, because if you're out in public doing a screening, you want something that's going to be quick. Some people don't want to take off their shoes in public. And it allows you to get half a graph so that you can then discuss what you found and invite them to come into your practice for the full exam. It's a marketing tool. It doesn't give clinically relevant information, but it gives the patient a sample of what they can expect. It also allows you to print the screening report, which is a very nice little marketing report that we've put together. So screening exam is used for public screenings, and we've had people call and ask, how do I install the screening part? And the answer is you just go
Beginning exam,
click right there on the tab.
9.
Okay, we are coming down to the end. There are well, let's see, there are two other tips I want to talk about here. And so here they are. Let me switch back. Isn't it fun that it does that every time? Okay, first of all, just in brief, I want to say don't over-explain the graph. Sometimes there's a tendency for practitioners to want to give a brain dump to the patient and tell them everything they know. But I've found that patients get it really quick. 30 seconds of explanation is plenty just to talk about. You can see what's high, you can see what's low. We're going to fix the highs and lows because we want it all balanced, and these correlate with your symptoms. That's it. They get it. There's not necessarily the need to go through a lot of other explanations. And this question came up because I talked to a practitioner who said, you know, ever since I added AcuGraph, it's really slowed me down because I'm spending time going through all these graphs with the patient. And by the time I've explained every graph to them, you know, I've spent 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? You're explaining every graph? Don't do that. That's more information than they want. Really, a patient's interested in two things. Do you know what's wrong and can you fix it? That's all they care about, honestly. So use the graph to give a very convincing case that yes, you know what's wrong, and yes, you can help, and move on and get to work helping them out. AcuGraph should actually cut down on the amount of time that you need to spend explaining to a patient. It should not add to it. And I have heard from other practitioners who've said, I've been able to be so much more efficient and see more patients in a day because after the first time I ever graph them, they get it. And on subsequent visits, all they need to see is a graph and we're good to go. I don't have to spend a lot of time talking to them about lung phlegm or liver qi stagnation or whatever I used to try to explain. Okay, and then the other point I wanted to make is this right here, which I think is probably one of the most underused of the graphs. This is the graph that's the information graph where it talks about each of the imbalances that are found. And this is the one where if you have a very inquisitive patient, they want to ask a million questions, give them this. Put it in the printout, put it in the email, however you give it to them, and tell them, look, I want you to read through this thing. This is going to answer most of your questions. And I want you to circle any of the symptoms that you've had in the last month or that you currently have. This will give them not only some better understanding, but it will also help them give you all the information they forgot to tell you when they gave you all their intake info. You'll find out that they circle stuff that they never mentioned to you, and it helps them understand and helps you understand what's going on with their health. So don't just go for the pretty pictures, but hand them this report or email them this report and use it to its full advantage. You find that it's very helpful. And with that, we come to the question part of AcuGraph. Of the webinar today. So I want to take a quick look and see what questions we have. Make sure we answer all of to ask anything you want. So I'm going to jump over here and see what questions we have. All right. Let's see. Number one, Kim says, my muscular dystrophy client needs a wet Kleenex in her hand when we graph and treat next to the bar in hand, or we find it hard. You know, that may be an edge case there. That's a good point. If you have somebody who has extraordinary, can't get good conductivity, then having some moisture around that bar may be helpful. We found that for the most part, generally, because there are so many sweat glands in the palm, generally than somebody holding that in their palm, they have really good results. But yes, you can use a wet Kleenex wrapped around that, or you can simply moisten the palm right there and then put that in the hand. And that's certainly acceptable to do. Great point, Kim. Thank you. Emma says, I do the graph every time with my patients and balance the graph. When I want to add the same protocol every time, how do I do it? Sorry, I don't remember. Okay, let me pull up AcuGraph here on my screen and let's walk through that. That's a great question, Emma. So give me 1 second. We'll pull up this one. And
Left,
here we go.
lung 9.
Okay, so I'm going to go back here to I'll start with my patient overview. And let's say I've just done this graph on this patient. And now I want to know, you say that you balance the graph, but you also want to add the same protocol every time. Well, the quickest way to do that, you can do it right here, because over here is where you build your treatment plan, over on the right side. So let's suppose I'm going to balance the graph. There's some points recommended down here underneath. And I click the yellow button, add these to today's plan. That this issue, I can click right here on add protocol, or I can click on add point. If I want to add a protocol, then I just jump in here, find the protocol, whatever it is that they're dealing with. Suppose this patient has prostate trouble. So I hit the prostate protocol, These are the points that I'm going to use. I can click add all, or I can manually add them one at a time. So if none of them are added, then I can say, okay, I don't want all these, but I want CV3, I want spleen 9, and the 2 bladder points. As I click them, they're added. And then I can hit begin treatment. And when I do that, then as you can see, this treatment plan gets added right away into my notes, shows me what I did, and I'm ready to go. Okay. Mikhail says, are there practitioners who graph themselves? Answer, oui, bien sûr. Kimberly says, yes, I graph myself all the time. And that is absolutely true. You can graph yourself, and that's a good thing to do. On a side note, my wife, being forced to live with me, has become quite a grapher. And so she graphs herself all the time as well. And she's quite good at it. And so sometimes I'll come home from work and she'll hand me a box of needles and say, I got a belt block, fix it, as happened yesterday. And so I do. The last thing I'll tell you, and I appreciate everybody who attended today. Thank you so much for coming. There are many, many more tips, many, many more pro things that you don't know about. And I put in as many as I could fit within the time constraints we had today. I really don't like to go too long. And so we may do this again with just more tips and how-tos. Meanwhile, you should be using your AcuGraph. You should be looking at the various options, look at the various screens, go to the training, go to the account portal that we talked about at the very beginning, and find out what you're missing. Make sure you're getting the most out of your AcuGraph system so that you're getting a great return on your investment, so that you have a busy, thriving, successful practice and happy patients. That's what we want for everybody out there. That's why we do what we do every day.
One quick plug here I wanted to add. We've got some great, even simple questions. Somebody's asking questions about if their patient has anxiety, should I do this and this? What I really would like you to do is make sure all of you are part of our Facebook forum. We are always answering questions like this. The answers are there. We get group conversations. Our practitioners are so smart, and they are always giving fantastic advice. If you're trying to do a health fair and you've got some thoughts and ideas and you throw it on there, then all of our practitioners will chime in and they'll help you. So this is supposed to just touch the surface of your questions. We want to keep going and answer your questions, but come on over to the forum, join us there, and we will keep answering.
Awesome. You know what I love second most about the Facebook group?
The pictures that I post of the whole group?
No, those are third. Sorry. Okay. My second most favorite thing in the Facebook group is that when people post questions there, often they get answered before I can even get there to answer them. And I'm going, woo, I don't have to answer that question. Somebody did it for me. Thank you.
Hey, did you talk about your sticker?
Hold on, I'll get there.
Okay.
The number one thing I like about the Facebook group is when people post their success. We have people say, hey, everybody, I'm doing my first health fair. Here's my booth. Here's my banner. What do you think? Everybody's cheering them on, saying, you go get them. And then they come back and say, holy cow, it went great. I got 12 new patients out of it. That keeps me going. That is exciting, not only for me, but for everybody there. So post your success. Tell us how your patients are doing. Hey, look at this. See the sticker? I love acupuncture. Hard to see on my white shirt. It's oval shaped. If you're looking for those stickers, go to acucharts.com, plural of chart, acucharts.com. That's our website where we have our charts, our posters, and now our stickers. And for some reason, there's been a huge run on these things and we can't keep them in stock. They're selling like crazy because people love giving a sticker to their patients after they graph them so that they can wear it out of the office and tell other people about their acupuncturist. Just like the little I voted stickers on election day. So grab some of those. We sell them by the 100 and enjoy. And with that, anything else, Kimberly, before we end?
I say if you're going to put a sticker on your patient when they walk out the door, hand them 3 business cards as well, because wherever they go, people will say, you love acupuncture. Tell me about your acupuncturist.
Amen. Absolutely. What a great way to say, oh, I go to Kimberly Thompson. She's amazing. Here's her card. All right, everybody. We will see you next month. Thank you for joining us today, and hope everybody has a great weekend and a great month. Goodbye.
See you on the forum. Bye-bye.